Do you know what the first battle of the Civil War was?
Sumter?
Sumter.
Yeah.
How many people died at Sumter?
Not very. I think there was one.
And you know how he died?
Did he fall on his own?
It was an accident.
Yeah.
Some kind of accident happened. Do you know what the first actual armed conflict of the Civil War was?
It's Harper's Ferry. Right?
First Battle of Bull Run. Manassas. And we historically say Sumter was the start of the Civil War. However, after Sumter, the people of the United States did not believe a civil war was happening or even could happen. So when the troops were amassing in Manassas, local residents went to have picnics on the hilltop to watch. And it was bedlam when the Union and Confederate soldiers started shooting at each other and people were getting their guts blown out and cannon fire was ripping them apart. And the funny thing is, if the Confederacy marched on DC at that moment, the South would have won the war in an instant. But the Confederacy believed that by repelling the Union forces, the war was over. And they have asserted themselves. By doing so, the Union would back down. Instead, as the Confederacy backed off, the Union doubled its forces, called for conscription, and then deployed shitloads of people to go back and invade the South.
Your points about normalcy bias and optimism bias, or however you put it, are well taken. But here's where I come from. I don't come from it from either of those points of view. I come from it as these people are all Republican governors, Democrat presidents. These are all people who are high up in the system. These people do not sit around like we do at night and stress to no end about the culture and America and what's happening. They just don't. They'll pretend like they do for the cameras, but they don't. And so you're asking people, or you're thinking people who are not true believers will start conducting themselves as if they are true believers. That is my point. My point is, in the end, both for Abbott and Joe Biden, what really benefits them in the end is you drive some donations, you rev up the base, and in the end, you kind of work something out where you both look okay. Because, look, Biden's already got his revolution. He already owns the federal government. He has it all. Abbott is the governor of the second most powerful state in the country. He's doing just fine, too. These people are not going to risk their position to escalate things.
No donations. The page that he posted.
Well, now that says something.
Right.
Now that says something.
I don't know that I completely agree. The issue right now is that Joe Biden's popularity is in like the mid-30s. And so it may be that these governors are thinking, yeah, there's not going to be a civil war, but the winning side of the donations and the political stature is going to be opposing Joe Biden.
Maybe.
Well, back to what we were talking about, and I remember. Everyone remembers the propaganda from COVID, right? We don't have to go over all that again. The endless amounts from everywhere, from doctors, media, politicians, all of them. Everyone remembers the endless COVID propaganda, right? Again, I keep coming back to this. What if something bad happens on the border? What if someone gets killed? What if someone gets hurt bad? What if it's a kid or a woman? Can you imagine what the propaganda campaign would do? It would be George Floyd on steroids. If somebody gets hurt down there, the campaign they would wage against the right would be bad. And I'm not saying I love everything they're doing. I'm saying we are entering a territory that is fraught with risk. Because of the country itself.
I got one more for you. What if someone makes a very believable but kind of grainy deep fake of a CBP agent opening fire on the National Guard?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And several of them. What happens if several
people... Or vice
people,
versa. National Guard back the other way.
So there's this video that we talked about in the culture war of MH370. It's not really. It's a video of a plane in the sky with orbs circling around it, and then it just disappears. It goes... And it was published on YouTube like 3 months after MH370 vanished. Didn't say it was MH370, but everyone thought it was. And now people believe it's a real video. Even though there's other people who have like debunked it and said, here's where this CGI graphic came from this video game. One of the reasons people believe it is because there's two angles, two different videos, and it's filming a screen. So what if someone made this video of a border conflict and they CG rendered perfectly using Unreal Engine or something? Holy shit, dude. Have you seen
Unreal Engine?
Have you seen the current Unreal? I was at Best Buy the other day because we're buying TVs for the new studio. And it was a video of a guy para skiing, I guess you'd call it. They've got
those guys are nuts.
They've got skis on, and they're skiing with the parachute, and then they pull up and they can jump. And then I'm like, I think it's fake. Yeah, that's got to be CGI, but it's kind of hard to tell. What if someone makes multiple angles of the same thing, and it looks like the fighting's begun. What happens when Greg Abbott sees that video and says, get me info on what's going on? I mean, I look, let me tell you how nightmarish and precarious all of this could be. One person. Building a machine requires shitloads of people, from managerial expertise, resource acquisition, engineering, etc. And one dumb motherfucker can throw a tech deck into it and break the whole thing. Yeah. The same is true for this country. And I don't want to explain exactly, I wouldn't want to say exactly how, because but let me just say, the deepfake thing combined with one other technique that is easily available to the public, I guarantee 100% would result in a civil war happening tomorrow. I don't want to say what that is.
I disagree.
I can't say what it is.
Whatever the technique is, and here's why I disagree. The American people are so apathetic that 25% of the Republicans even show up in primaries. We can't get people to vote in a primary, but they're going to take up arms.
How many people fought in the American Revolution?
No way. Third of the country.
3%.
Really?
Yeah. Estimated. 3% were the armed forces who actually fought.
Oh, the armed forces. Yeah. 30% of the country was on the side of the revolutionaries. 30% of them were loyalists. 30% of them sat out the whole
That's
thing.
Actually that letter about 30, 30, and 30 was actually a guess. It wasn't correct. The estimates are that it was like 28%. Revolutionary sentiment was actually really high, or relatively high, but it was not 50-50. It was in the high 40s, I believe. And then the don't care were like in the 20s or whatever.
It's very regional too,
right?
Between the North and the South and everything else.
Yep, a lot of loyalists in the North.
Yeah.
So the issue with civil war, and this is again a mistake a lot of people make when it comes to war, is they assume that wars are fought by everybody, when in fact every single war in the history of the world has been fought by almost nobody.
Well, civil wars they are, though, and civil wars. I wish civil wars are felt by everyone in a nation. They're felt brutally by everyone in a nation. They're really, really bad, and they should be avoided at all costs.
So how many? Do you know how many police officers are in New York?
No,
I think it's the third largest army in the world. Or
30 to 40,000, I believe, police officers, with 1/3 of them being support staff. How many people live on Manhattan Island?
Like 8 million or something.
2.5 million.
Yeah, not 8 million. It's
2.5.
There's the.
It went down, I think, to 2 million or whatever when everyone fled because of COVID. But with the boroughs included, New York goes up to like 9, and then with the greater metro, which includes Connecticut and stuff, I think you get to 13. But let's talk about Manhattan Island, because of the police forces that are there, they're split up with Brooklyn, with Queens, Long Island, etc. So, Queens and Brooklyn are on Long Island, I guess. So we wouldn't include Long Island in New York City. Let's say Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Manhattan. Who am I forgetting?
Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan.
Manhattan. What percentage of Manhattan is required to be in protest to shut down the NYPD in its entirety?
5?
Yeah.
10?
That's a little high. 200,000 people? No, 2%.
1,000 could do it. I mean, if you well, it depends on how you deployed them. Are
2%.
we talking about some riot or some organized group here?
So you've got 2 million people on Manhattan. 2% is 40,000 people. The NYPD is done. If 2% of Manhattan feels such anger that they go out and march and smash and destroy, there is nothing that can stop them. They call in the National Guard and set up perimeters and have to use advanced weapons, crowd control techniques to try and stop such a massive crowd of 40,000
Which would get people killed, because eventually you'd have to start shooting, and that would be horrible.
Now let's
you've got them shooting people?
Let's talk about 4%. Let's just say 5%. So now we're talking about 100,000 people. Just 5% of the population. If just 5% of Manhattan decided that the NYPD was corrupt, racist pieces of shit, and they should go down and shut down capitalism, there is nothing in the United States, no amount of force that could stop it. There is no U.S. armed forces. They could, theoretically, you could argue they could send the army in with a bunch of guns, but I do not believe the U.S. would be able to deploy enough forces into New York to compete with 100,000 marching, angry people who are violent.
But it wouldn't take place in Manhattan. you're not going to get people involved in something as
I don't know,
horrible as
during-
a civil war
during
without
BLM.
somebody invading. That's the thing. They're not going to be an uprising in
You should have
Manhattan. You
seen
have to
it when-
invade people.
In 2020, you should have, like, it was pretty crazy in 2020 because
NYPD stood down.
the NYPD stood down. They were kneeling down. You had
For the left.
They gave up.
Right.
They gave up. They were refusing to respond to calls.
Yeah, they were refusing. Yeah, that was going on. People were setting NYPD vehicles on fire, and since then, New York City has paid out a lot of those protesters who set vehicles on fire and stuff. And you had people marching around through the streets, causing all kinds of mayhem. The police could not control the looting. They could not control the protesters. They couldn't control it at all. They just couldn't. They couldn't
No,
control it. And
I understand the point, but the point Tim made is not wrong. I just mean, if you're ever going to have something as horrible, God forbid, as a civil war in the country, it's not going to be an uprising in Manhattan.
But
the only thing that would prompt it would be the feds coming into a red area to kick it up. It would have to be a physical confrontation.
But the point of this was you saying that 25% of Republicans don't even go out and vote or whatever. And my point is this. Texas has 29.53 million people. Let's call it a purple state, cut that number in half and just round it to about 15 million Republicans. Let's say 10% of them are upset with the border crisis and the illegal immigration. 1.5 million people. Let's say 10% of them are actually willing to assist the state in dealing with the problem, which is now federal agents. 150,000 people. What would happen if 1% of Republicans in Texas said, Governor Abbott, tell us where to stand? The federal government is impotent and powerless and can do nothing. There's no amount of military force the feds would be able to bring in to control that. There's no F-16s. There's no nuclear bombs. They can make every argument they want, but there's a reason why we could not win in Afghanistan and Vietnam. There's a reason why we only got an armistice in Korea. Large groups of people with guns are the principal force of any armed faction. And anybody who's played any video game like Command and Conquer or Warcraft or StarCraft or whatever knows that one of the best strategies is to mass produce the lowest level combat fighter and just send wave after wave at your enemy and overwhelm them. There's no point, like in these video games like Command and Conquer, you can build up technology and you can build nuclear bombs and you can create tanks. And then at some point, some guy was like, I'm just going to keep spamming infantry and I'm going to mass produce infantry. And America learned that lesson. Joe Biden's like, you can't go up against us because we got F-16s. He said it again recently. Sorry, bro. 150,000 people in one area. You can't, like, your bombs will not stop that. And further, anyone who knows war strategy, psyops, etc., knows if the Biden administration took up active conflict against 150,000 people, shit, let's say 1% of that. If the Biden administration opened fire on 1,500 private citizen Texans who were protesting and demanding an answer to the illegal immigration crisis, you would ignite a civil war overnight. And not because everyone says, how dare you attack Texas? But much like the Southerners in the Civil War who fought, it's, oh my God, they're killing people. I have to defend my home. That's it. So I'll stress this. I will not say this on air. There is one simple technique available to every single human in this country that could be combined with deepfake technology that I believe would absolutely result in a civil war tomorrow. And it is rudimentary and it is simple, and I will not say it on air because of the risk that someone actually tried to do something like that.
I do not think people are near angry enough yet in this country. I see a country that, look, I brought up COVID. Every COVID lockdown governor, mayor, every COVID lockdowner got reelected. Every single one of them. Every single one of them, the people ran out and voted for these people again. These are not people who are welling up with anger about tyranny in the country.
Do you think the people in Atlanta, in the Confederacy, were ready to go out into their streets and throw firebombs at their own mayors?
Your point is it only has to be a small percentage.
No.
I understand that.
The people in Atlanta walked outside and said, hello, brother, I agree with you. The people across the country are the problem. So, of course, they elected all the same people all over again. When the COVID lockdowns happened, the Democrats were cheering. Well, of course, they elected the same people all over again.
Yeah, they liked it.
Yeah, so did Republicans, though.
they're still
Republicans did the
boosting
same
their
thing.
kids.
Yeah, but what Republican areas did they accept all of that?
Mike DeWine got reelected easily, sailed through his Republican primary,
Ohio?
governor of very, very red
The
Ohio.
primary I can accept, for
Very,
sure.
very red Ohio, and Republicans in Ohio went out, overwhelmingly voted him in. Greg Abbott, look, he's all in the news right now. Greg Abbott was awful during COVID. He wasn't Andrew Cuomo. He was awful during COVID. Close your bar. I'll allow you to do this. I'll allow you to do that. And the free state of Texas ran out, and he destroyed everybody. He had 3 very legitimate primary opponents, destroyed them. I do not see a people welling up with anger about the tyranny in their country. I do not see it.
But that's never been the case. How many people do you think have Antifa sentiments in the United States?
Probably not that many.
Not that many, probably.
But what does that make? Give me a number. 30,000?
No way. You mean members
wonder.
or sentiments? What are you talking about?
Well, they're
How many
it's not
people?
like they
How many
carry
people
cards.
protested during the Summer of Love riots
20,000?
across the
30,000?
country?
Oh,
I don't know how
think
big they were. I
500?
wasn't in every one. No way. They were in every city.
In every single city.
Well,
you had
there were all the
thousands of
major
people.
ones.
Right.
500,000 people.
They had people in Kenosha. They
Yeah,
had
that sounds.
500.
That sounds.
Yeah.
500
So about 500,000 people.
Oh, you
more.
said 500,000.
or more.
Well, I guess there could be.
That's how many soldiers are in the U.S. Armed Forces? 1 million something.
Yeah, there's like just over 1 million, if that. I don't know what they are now because of retention.
Why was it that far left extremists were able to shut down a police precinct in Seattle and take control of an entire neighborhood?
Because the government in charge of Seattle agreed with the protesters.
But it's not just the government. I mean, the people have to support an uprising, don't they?
The people have to support an uprising, but you also aren't going to have an uprising without levels of government supporting it. We keep talking about, the Confederacy and all these other things.
What
but
about revolutions? Revolutions don't have government supporting it. They just have the people supporting it. I mean, this is, I'm talking about what I learned from, what's his name, Che Guevara or whatever. You have to have the people support in order to conduct a revolution.
You do.
because
I'm not
you need
dismissing
them
that.
to,
Do you know what
feed you and stuff.
the principal factor in revolution is? The number one cause?
Lack of bread.
Yeah.
Lack of food?
Lack of bread. So when what's the guy's name?
Which revolution?
Haslov or whatever.
Oh, I don't know.
Hierarchy of needs. You know what I'm talking
Oh,
about?
Maslow.
Maslov. There you go. I couldn't get the first one.
I was trying to think, which revolution? Are we talking
I
Robespierre?
thought it was
So-
What's going
Pavlov,
on?
but he's the one with the dog.
That's
He's a
the
dog guy.
Yeah,
He's the
dog
yeah,
guy.
that's
So when people don't have food, shelter, or security, their nervous systems erupt. The cost of milk increased from 21 to 22, 15.2%. And the cost of milk is going up every year.
Eggs are still expensive.
Eggs are still expensive, ridiculously expensive,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What are they at?
It's like $7.99.
Holy shit.
I mean, those are the nice organic ones.
Oh, okay, but like-
still,
Wow.
I did buy
Fancy eggs.
I did
You-
buy
you-
some non-fancy eggs. I got half a dozen for $3.
No, my
Sit-
wife
sit-
does the
Yeah.
organic thing too. So
Yeah,
God only
$7.99
knows what we're
is
paying. Right.
Civil war may have this thin veneer of some kind of political or ideological cause, but the real reason people will go out in the street and firebomb is unrelated. Like the reason we got the Summer of Love had nothing to do with George Floyd. It had to do with people being locked in their homes, smelling like shit, unable to go outside, getting no sunlight, decaying by force. They were not allowed to leave. I mean, you kind of were, but everybody's in their cubicle shit New York apartment, rotting away, and they're losing their
And
minds.
the excuse to be able to go outside was
And an excuse was made.
That's what happened.
and
You
exactly-
could feel
right.
it because
People just wanted to go out and fuck shit up.
the day before George Floyd was killed on May 24th, 2020, we had been in lockdowns, whatever. My son and I had been at my mom's, in her far away house. And then we came back and it was like a beautiful spring day. It was gorgeous May, spring, New York. It was spectacular. We lived in Brooklyn, took the ferry to Manhattan. We walked all the way uptown. It was like, yes, the city will come back. The city is great. People were hanging out. It was gorgeous. And we were so heartened and hopeful. Went to the favorite cafe, got some sandwiches. There was actually a little mold on the bread. We didn't tell the guy because, I'm just glad that you exist still and you didn't get shut down. And the very next day, it was a beautiful spring day. It was gorgeous. The very next day was Central Park Karen, the lady with the bird watcher.
Oh,
and
wow.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, that was May 25th.
What a
that
shithead.
night, George Floyd. The video emerged. And by the weekend, everything that was hopeful about New York City was trashed under these protesters' feet because it's no coincidence that it was 10 weeks to the day that New York City went into lockdown and that it was just gorgeous out. I mean, it was beautiful.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.